What are apparently chilling details of Joanna Simpson's killing have emerged in a new documentary which begins tonight, which includes the police interview Joanna's killer, Robert Brown, gave exactly 1 day after he'd bludgeoned her to death.
His automatic release after serving half of his 26-year sentence in prison was blocked by the government last year. He is now appealing that decision. We're going to speak to Joanna's mum, Di Parks, alongside her best friend, Hetty Barkworth-Nanton, in just a moment. But first, here's Maddie Dunn with details of this horrific case.
We're joined by Joe's mother, Di Parks, and Joe's best friend, Hetty Barkworth-Nanton, who is now the chair of Refuge. That's the UK's biggest domestic violence charity for women. We'll come to you in a second, but I want to start with you, Di, if I can. This man, let's be clear, was convicted of manslaughter, not murder, a verdict that, one has to say, surprised a great many people when the jury returned it. But because it was manslaughter, that's why he's eligible for release halfway through his sentence. It's standard practice in manslaughter cases. Why do you actively fear his release?
We fear his release because he's dangerous, and it certainly wasn't manslaughter. It was premeditated all the way through. He dug the hole where he put the garden box many months before, and it was so carefully planned.
Why do you think the jury was convinced, to their satisfaction, that it wasn't murder, that it was manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility? Did he have an excellent defence counsel?
I fear that the chilling clip of my granddaughter speaking to the police the day after her mother disappeared was not shown in court. Had that been shown in court, I can tell you it would have been a different verdict.
What did it show?
It showed my granddaughter Katie being interviewed by the police and her crying, and I never really wanted to see it again after listening to it.
No, that police interview with your granddaughter Katie is played in the documentary tonight, but we're not playing it now because, as you say, it's far too traumatic for you.
Yes.
But you think that would have had a huge impact in the trial?
Oh, I do. Absolutely. Absolutely.
When you say that you fear his release because he's still dangerous, what do you think he might do?
I don't really know, but I've said I hope he comes to kill me first so that all my family and Hetty and Belinda and, in fact, women in general will be safe, because he's a psychopath, in my opinion. And unfortunately, when he took a knife to my daughter in 2007, he told her that he'd hated our family for the 8 years they were married.
Di, to hear you say this morning, you hope that you die first to protect everybody else, is absolutely jaw-dropping.
No, well, I mean it, because I'm going to be 85 in May, and I've lived my life, and my family, they're fearful. My granddaughter, my grandson, my son, his family, we're all terrified.
And what you mean by that is that you feel he didn't get justice, your daughter didn't receive justice, and that if you were killed, then he would have to go to prison for murder. That's what you're implying, isn't it?
He certainly should be serving his 26-year sentence. And in fact, now he would have been serving 2/3 of that 26-year sentence. But 12 years ago, it was sadly half. And if he killed me, he would obviously be sent to prison, I would think, for whole life tariff, really.
Hetty, you were Joanna's best friend. I mean, I feel shaking listening to what Di says. This is how frightened the whole family around Joanna is about the release. Yeah. And what Di is also alluding to there is that when he was sentenced, the automatic release was set at half of the prison sentence. Yeah. He would be released on licence. That's right. Now that has been tweaked. Yeah. Now you would have to serve 2/3. Yeah. But it is absolutely shocking that a mum would say the only way I can guarantee safety for anyone else connected with this man is if something happens to me. It's, I mean, it's shocking.
It's devastating. There's no other word I can use. But I absolutely understand, Di and I have talked about this, I totally understand it. It's where you get to when you are faced with the sheer terror of a man like that being out and around. Mm-hmm. Let me give you an indication of how he was portrayed in the High Court 2 weeks ago. So we're terrified, and I always hoped that that terror was sort of a bit inflated. Mm-hmm. But in the court 2 weeks ago, the Ministry of Justice demonstrated that over the course of the 13 years in prison, he has consistently showed himself with narcissistic behaviours, with superiority over all professionals. He's never engaged in any rehabilitation programmes, in any healthy relationships programmes. He has instead focused his energy on victim blaming on Jo and grievance against Jo's mother and her family, including the children, and her friends.
You're saying he actively bears a grudge and talks about the grudge that he bears against the woman that we've just been speaking to and her family.
That is the and her friends. That's the evidence that was given in court 2 weeks ago. And finally, he has been assessed as a very, very high risk of serious harm or murder on any intimate partner. This is the sort of man we're talking about, and he could, if the judge rules in favour of his appeal 2 weeks ago, he could be out next week.
But this is a man who's... Sorry, I just want to say, this is a man whose lawyers say he was sentenced by the court after careful examination as to whether or not he was dangerous, and the court found he was not.
That's right, and that is exactly the debate at the High Court, what the Ministry of Justice are saying, and they were clearly, and Alex Chalk MP was clearly very, very careful about the evidence that he put forward, that because of what's happened in the last 13 years, he's actually now demonstrating himself as more dangerous than how he was demonstrated in court, and that's important.
You've seen this documentary in full, and you've seen the aspects of it, the elements of it, which probably should have been shown in court during the trial, for the interview we've just heard about. Yeah. You've seen it now. If you'd been on the jury and you weren't her best friend and you'd seen those elements, would you have convicted him of murder?
Absolutely. It was a totally different trial. So, number one, Katie's evidence wasn't shown. In fact, Katie's evidence was given by two men role-playing.
So this is Katie is the little girl
who was 9 at the time. Two men role-playing the verbals, right? And the second thing is, people are going to see extensive police interviews with Robert Brown, and he comes across as a complete narcissist. He calls her Princess Perfect in his interviews.
I think we have... we don't have the police interview, but we do have the 999 call that he made. And all of that evidence, none of that police interviews was given to the jury. They never saw that. And they had to rule, first and foremost, on whether he was suffering from an adjustment disorder when he killed Jo. There is no way, when viewers see that tonight, that any juror could conclude, having seen those police interviews, that he was suffering from anything other than extreme narcissism.
Well, as Suzanne says, let's hear the 999 call in question.
This is to arrange a meeting with police for what he described as an incident the day before.
Could you just explain to me what the situation is?
Well, I've spoken to my lawyer, and he said not to say anything. So,
can I ask why he said that?
The incidents of a serious nature.
Can I ask what it is? How serious?
I really don't want to say anything, actually.
I'm assuming it's regarding your ex-partner.
Yes.
Okay, and the incidents occurred recently?
Yes, last night.
Right. And you're both okay, are you? You're not. None of you are harmed at all, are you?
Well, we have one person is.
Di, you're listening to that. Yes. He was ice cool, wasn't he? Ice cold.
The thing is that he rang the police after speaking to his father. And his brother had come round to the house where Jo lived and looked around and saw no sign of Jo at all. All the lights were still on in the house. And they obviously persuaded Brown that he should speak to the police.
And we just heard from your daughter's best friend that in prison he's continued to paint himself as a victim and to speak what sounds like quite aggressively about you and about your family. I guess, I mean, you knew that anyway, but I guess just hearing that again underlines your concerns about what he might do if he's released.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. We're all really very nervous about him coming out. Very nervous.
How confident are you that he won't be released?
I've sort of always been confident since the beginning of our campaign in a funny kind of way, because I really believe that common sense has to prevail. As I said, I think if the judge... this is a legal issue. It's not about right or wrong. It's a legal issue. If the judge rules that from a legality point of view he has to be let out, then we will absolutely be pressing to take it to the Supreme Court.
To the Supreme Court?
Yeah. There is a wider issue as well for the documentary that I just want to make sure that viewers understand, which is that domestic abuse... people used to be called domestic violence, and people still to this day think, well, if I'm not being hit, then I'm not a victim of domestic abuse. We still, at Refuge, get calls to the National Domestic Abuse Helpline where people say, I don't think I'm a victim of abuse, but can I just talk to you? And they paint this horrific story of what they're enduring. Joe was never subject to violence. He threatened her with a knife once, but other than that, it was all coercive and controlling behaviour. And they'd been 3 years post-separation. So, you know, her case is a really important one for people to see, to understand the nuances of domestic abuse, and that actually non-violent domestic abuse can often be the most dangerous. So that anyone who sees it and resonates with anything that they see, please reach out and get help.
You say the most dangerous in the sense as well that it's a red flag.
Absolutely massive red flag.
OK.
Huge.
Hetty, thank you very much indeed. And Di,
thank you, Di.
All our love to you. Thank you so much for being, well, so brave and so open, and for painting a picture which, let's hope, you know, the right thing is done, and also that other people in this situation can hear and perhaps feel empowered. Yeah.
And you say that the documentary, this two-part documentary, doesn't ram an argument down us, the viewers' throats, but it's very clear, once you've seen it, where the truth lies.
Yeah, absolutely.
OK.
Thank you. If you've been affected by any of the issues we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.
And this new ITV documentary, it's called The British Airways Killer, is on television tonight and on Thursday at 9 o'clock on both ITV1 and ITVX. Thank you again. Thanks for coming.